Aloha and good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Hack. I'm from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council in Honolulu. We are a nonprofit charged with helping companies in Hawaii and the Pacific Islands export their products. And to be clear, when we say export, that means to a foreign market, not to a neighbor island, not to the mainland, not even to Guam or Saipan, but to a foreign country such as Japan or Germany or Canada, etc. We're very fortunate to be able to put on this series of seminars and one-on-one company mentoring sessions every year because we receive a grant from DBET as part of the State Trade Expansion Program, or HiSTEP in Hawaii. And in turn, DBET receives a grant every year from SBA in Washington, D.C., the Small Business Administration. And today we're actually coincidentally talking about export finance, and we have a speaker from SBA here, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jamie Lum from DBET, and she'll explain a bit about the STEP program here in Hawaii called HiSTEP. Jamie.
Mahalo, Rob. Aloha and good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us this morning for our export finance session today. Thank you to our speakers for being here. As Rob has already mentioned, I'm Jamie Lum with DBED as the acronym for our department. And we do administer the state's State Trade Expansion Program, or STEP, and in Hawaii we call it HiSTEP, with funds that we receive from the SBA. We are actually currently in the process right now of applying for the next round of grant funding, and hope to be successful once again. So HiSTEP is an export development program. It is for open to companies, anyone who is interested in exporting, so new to export companies, as well as what we call market expansion companies, or companies that have already been exporting, but maybe looking to export to different countries, or maybe they have different new product lines to introduce in places where they are already exporting. So it's open to a wide range of small businesses in Hawaii. And thank you, Rob, for putting our website up here. So our website is invest.hawaii.gov. And if you go under the exporting tab, Rob has opened up the page on HiSTEP. So just briefly, we have three components of the program. We have what we call our export readiness component, which this webinar this morning is part of that. We do work with the Hawaii Pacific Export Council to put on all of these sessions, and we work with many other partners like the SBDCs, the Small Business Development Centers, the MINC Center, which is our state Women's Business Center, VBOC, which is the Veterans Business Outreach Center, as well as our Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. They are the manufacturing extension partner in Hawaii. So we work with all of these organizations to help companies. Besides putting on these seminars, we have business advising sessions working with these partner organizations, where when companies register for HiSTEP, we will assign you to one of our partner organizations so that you can have a chance to talk with them, introduce your company, talk a little bit about your company and your exporting goals or your exporting experience. And they can help you with various questions you might have about exporting, or guide you to different portions of our HiSTEP program. So it starts with registering for HiSTEP. So there is a place on our page there where you register and give us some information about your company, and it doesn't obligate you in any way to participate in anything in HiSTEP. It simply gives us some information about your company and a place to start learning more about you and what you'd like to do through the program. So that's our export readiness. Another component is our what we call our Hawaii Pavilions, where DBED and working with the Department of Agriculture has selected various trade shows to go into. We organize a Hawaii Pavilion. We use our STEP funds to subsidize the majority of the cost for being at that trade show. And then we will go out and recruit Hawaii companies to participate with us at these shows. We find that, well, what we're trying to do is to make it more affordable for small businesses to be a part of these large trade shows because it can be quite costly. So hopefully we do make it more affordable. And we believe there's also great value in coming together and exhibiting together under the Hawaii brand. And companies have found that to be valuable, as well as being able to learn from each other as they're exhibiting, talking with other Hawaii companies about their exporting experience. So that's our Hawaii Pavilions component. And then the final component is our company assistance. And this is where companies can apply directly to DBED for some funding to help implement portions of their export development plan. For this year, that's already closed. We usually have it open in the fall and take applications all the way through into January so that we can allow companies the longest period of time to be able to use those funds. And funds can be used for trade shows, and we mean other trade shows. They do not have to be the ones that we have selected for our Hawaii Pavilions. And in fact, we do like to see that companies are looking at other kinds of activities. So trade shows, travel. If you are familiar with the Gold Key service with the U.S. Department of Commerce, it can be used to cover that. If you get EXIM Bank credit insurance, any fees that you might incur are also eligible to be reimbursed with STEP funding. There are a whole list of other types of expenses that can be used. So in a nutshell, that's what HiSTEP is. Again, I encourage you, if you are not familiar with it, to please go to our website. If you have not registered, and I see that there are several people on participating today who are actually registered with the program. So thank you for joining us. But again, it starts with the registration and we'll go from there. Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you very much again to all of you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Jamie. That was great. This webinar that you're attending right now is being recorded, and after some minor editing, I will upload it to the Hawaii Pacific Export Council's YouTube page, which is here. If you just go to YouTube and search for Hawaii Pacific Export Council, you will see many years worth of these events recorded and posted here. Some of the events in the past are very country specific. Some are more topic specific, such as marketing in Japan, IT and e-commerce related, Korea, Taiwan, China, etc. So these go back several years, and I think that there's a wealth of knowledge here that I would encourage our Hawaii exporters to go and look through some of these videos. Okay, with that, let's jump right into our first speaker is Jim Newton. He's kind enough to join us from Oregon today, and he's responsible for Hawaii with SBA and their international operations. So Jim, you can explain a little bit about what you do and then jump into your presentation, please.
Absolutely. And aloha and good morning to all of you. I'm Jim Newton with SBA's Office of International Trade in Portland, Oregon. I'm one of 21 international trade finance specialists across the country who focus on export financing for small businesses. Now, I happen to have the good fortune of calling on Hawaii, Guam, and the Northern Marianas, in addition to Oregon and Southern Idaho and Northern Nevada and Southwest Washington. But I do want to take my part of the presentation here today to introduce you to SBA's export programs. And I want to start off with how SBA defines exporting. And I'll say this is actually a big deal for Hawaii, in that we've gone through great deliberations to arrive at the fact that an export transaction is the sale of goods or services to a foreign buyer. And what that means is that sales made through international tourism, by example, are eligible under our programs. That wasn't the case for a while, but it is now and will continue to be based on our new definition of an export transaction. There are some exceptions to international tourism in that we cannot support accommodations, that is basically hotels, and we cannot support gas stations, but which really applies more to Canada and northern US. But the international tourism is again an eligible export. The other general 7A rules that apply, the applicant must be located and primarily operate in the US. Loan proceeds must be used exclusively for the benefit of the domestic operations, and the business or businesses are eligible only if the business is at least 51% owned by US citizens or those with lawful permanent resident status. We also use as a definition of exporting for our programs, indirect exporting, where, where the exporter is actually selling to another US company as the buyer, but that company in turn will be exporting the items, services that are provided by the original the original seller. So companies that are not directly selling overseas, but are selling through other US companies and can be documented, are eligible to utilize these programs. And then we also have a provision under the International Trade Loan Program that small businesses adversely affected by import competition, regardless of whether or not they plan to export, can receive support under these programs. Now, these are the three export programs that we provide. The International Trade Loan, average loan size of around $2 million, though it's available for up to $5 million. And then this does include support for permanent working capital. We'll go over some of the other use of proceeds here as we go into the International Trade Loan Program. Export Express Program, average size around 264,000. So as Greg was saying, we tend to support the small businesses that are fairly new to export. We also support companies that are well established. The $5 million size of the International Trade Loan or the Export Working Capital Program allows us to support some well-established companies, but we like to be able to help new businesses get established and begin to build their base of business overseas. The Export Express Program can be used for working capital and term loan support up to $500,000. The guarantee is 90% for loans up to $350,000, and then 75% for loans between $350,000 and $500,000. And then finally, the Export Working Capital Program, the EWCP, which has an average size of around $2 million. It can be delivered as either an asset-based line of credit or as a transactional financing of a purchase order financing for up to $5 million. And it can also be used to issue standby letters of credit with a requirement for only 25% collateral of the face value of that standby letter of credit. I'm not going to really get into the EWCP today. I'm going to really focus on the International Trade Loan Program and Export Express Program. But if anybody has any questions or an interest in pursuing EWCP, please do contact me directly. So I'm going to begin with the International Trade Loan. Again, 90% guarantee, loans up to $5 million, term loan only, same as a standard 7A program. All loans will require an export business plan. Key consideration, and we'll go back over that here in a little bit more detail. The International Trade Loan can be used to purchase real estate, purchase equipment, and it can be used for permanent working capital. Any purpose that leads to an increase in export sales or export markets and improves the firm's competitive position will qualify for the International Trade Loan. And a new feature, relatively new feature, is change of ownership under the ITL, International Trade Loan. It can be used for stock or asset purchases. There are some restrictions on change of ownership under an ITL compared to conventional 7A. No partial or intercompany transfers. Buyer must be otherwise ITL eligible. Acquisition must include the purchase of facilities or equipment to be used in exporting, and acquisitions of business for their international property are permitted their intellectual property, IP, I think too much in international terms, are permitted only if there is an acquisition of fixed assets too. And International Trade Loan collateral, it requires a first lien on any assets that are being financed to be purchased with the proceeds, but it does not require a blanket lien on all assets. The second position is available under the International Trade Loan, but it has to be done under SBA approval through the Loan Guarantee Processing Center, or what we call general processing. And other collateral may be required in that scenario. And then finally, no lien positions less than the second. ITL eligibility. Again, this is a definition, kind of a recurring definition here, but the applicant must establish that the ITL proceeds will expand existing export markets or develop new ones. Applicant details how the loan will increase exports in their export business plan, and the lender documents the same in their credit memo. And the ITL loans can support both new to export, e-commerce, and modest to significant growth in export sales. The export business plan is the most critical component, as I was alluding to a moment ago, of the eligibility process for international trade loans. While there is no mandatory format or required length, the export business plan must be a comprehensive and definitive plan that ties the loan proceeds to an increase in export sales by the applicant. Excuse me. Then as far as active exporters, there are existing exporters. They should include a discussion of current export markets, distribution agreements, and historical export sales performance. New to early stage exporters should include an explanation of target markets, a review of export competition, market entry strategies, including any trade barriers and required product modifications, and pending or signed distribution agreements or export orders. This is the ITL checklist that we provide to lenders. It's also a very good reference document for exporters to use in preparing their business plan. It's going to be part of the material that's going to be provided to you from this webinar, but you definitely want to borrow from or make use of the ITL checklist in completing your export plan. And these are two examples I'm going to give you of loan situations using the International Trade Loan. First here is a testing company in Southeast US. It has annual revenues of around $11 million. They used $1.7 million of the ITL to purchase a business and $3.2 million to purchase the facilities. Credit considerations in that case, buyout loan had a collateral shortfall, and the largest buyer represented 53% of previous year revenue, so there was a significant concentration. And sales forecasts were reliant on adding new foreign buyers and expanding existing buyers. So these are all factors in why this particular lender chose to utilize the ITL loan guarantee to support their decisioning for making this loan. They were supportive, but this made it a little bit easier for them to get to approval. And the outcome in this case, loan package was approved with underwriting support from the local OIT export finance manager, one of my colleagues here in the US, and funding helped the business expand into new markets. The second example for an international trade loan, chemical manufacturer in the Midwest, $20 million in annual revenues. They used the full $5 million of the international trade loan, and they also received a $2.5 million conventional line of credit, which lenders can certainly structure their facilities to be combined with our guarantee support. Credit considerations in this case, strong historical revenue growth and cash flow, diverse range of products across a diverse customer base, which we always like to see. And then the CEO, president had proven background managing similar companies. Outcome, financing completed and sales grew to 30 million from 20 million, and the higher guarantee allowed the bank to approve a much larger conventional debt facility than they would have been able to do otherwise. With that, we'll look at the Export Express program. This is one program with several uses, what I think of as the Swiss Army knife of export financing. It is a 90% guarantee on loans up to 350,000 and a 75% guarantee on loans between 350 and 500,000. The term loan options cover a variety of term financing needs. It can be a loan for 10 years for equipment purchases or for permanent working capital, and it could be out to 25 years amortization for real estate. So this is a very flexible loan structure. It even includes revolving credit line options. Revolving credit lines can be established for up to 7 years, and prior to the maturity date, the line can be paid off and by a conventional line or a term loan, either way. Special features: any export development activity to support export growth is an eligible use of funds. This is not unlike the use of the proceeds from a STEP grant, where the intent there is to provide sort of seed money in a way to enable exporters to attend trade shows or for other export development purposes. Well, this is almost a natural extension of the STEP grant, and this can be used in a similar manner. It is done as a loan, but it can be very helpful in continuing your export expansion or in developing new markets. It's done under full delegated authority to the lenders, using pre-existing credit guidelines for their underwriting, monitoring, and servicing. But they actually put this loan, the Express loan, in place, go to funding, document it, and then let us know that it's been put in place. And but as long as they're following our credit guidelines, that's totally acceptable. Applicant must have been in business for at least 12 months, though not necessarily in exporting. And they can, the required 12 months can actually be waived if they have prior proven experience. Export Express loans are not limited from a SBA Express loan. They are separated and actually can be used in combination. So the limits on Export Express are not impacted by an existing SBA Express facility. And then the applicant need only complete an export questionnaire rather than a full export plan. I'll come back to that in just a minute. As far as identifying opportunities, a term loan can be used for permanent working capital, as mentioned, equipment purchases, real estate purchases, or build out of existing property, debt refinance, change of ownership, or issuance of standby letter of credit. The requirements, the documentation is the same as SBA Express, if you're familiar with that program. And then the applicant must provide documentation of the following items: description of the products or services to be exported, explanation of how the loan proceeds will enable the business to enter new export markets or expand in existing export markets, list of the countries to which the business will export, and if that happens to be more than 3, then just the top 3, and then to estimate the borrower's export sales for the 12-month period following the date of the loan application. And all that is covered under this sample Export Express questionnaire. Again, part of the materials that will be provided to you. And I would highly recommend using this as a reference document for completing an application to your lender for an Export Express loan. Because keep in mind that SBA acts only as a guarantor to a lender of your choice to put these financings in place. And as I was commenting there a while ago, it can certainly help make the difference in getting to an approval. Another couple of examples, in this case for the Export Express facility, food manufacturer in the southeast of the US, 4.7 million annual revenues. This particular loan was for $286,000 to purchase new packaging equipment. Credit considerations were sales in Canada and Mexico were increasing, and the business needed to improve the efficiency of its production. So the business had steady flow, but had an excess leverage position from buying out a partner. All again considerations the bank had to take in their approval process, and having the guarantee help them get to approval. And I mean, I went skipped ahead there, but outcome: new packaging equipment boosted revenues and profits by 15%, allowing the business to add staff. On the next example, software and engineering company. And we definitely want to support services as well as manufacturers. Sometimes a little bit more of a challenge as far as establishing what the total export financing requirement is going to be, but it can be done. In this case, $3.9 million in revenues. The loan was for $375,000 for working capital and to refinance an existing conventional loan. Credit considerations, international projects led to a need for an increase in accounts receivable and the need for permanent working capital. In addition, the existing lender, or the prior lender, needed to be refinanced. And the outcome: term loan approved, cash flow, and allowed the business to pursue additional export markets. On that note, I'm going to tell you that your export finance manager is available to consult on all things international, to discuss eligibility, SBA, SOP questions. That's stock and trade for SBA and standard operating procedure. And we actually meet with bank clients as they're considering these financings, review export business plans with the lender or with the exporter, and review Export Express questionnaires. Here's my contact information. I am your export finance manager for Hawaii, and look forward to hearing from you. I really encourage you to call or send an email. I'd be glad to discuss your situation or potential financing requirements. And on that, I'm going to first of all thank you for attending. Mahalo, and open it up for questions for either my presentation or for Greg's.
Great. Thank you very much, Jim. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
I'd like to just jump into one quick comment here about your export business plan and the ITL checklist. We at Hawaii Pacific Export Council and DBEV, as part of the HiSTEP program, we are going to have an export plan writing workshop.
Cool.
It'll be 2 sessions starting August 11th from 9 to 11. It'll be a virtual one, and then we'll do another one a month later to follow up. So I would encourage everybody to try to attend that one.
That is really a valuable resource you're providing there.
Yeah, thank you. And while we're talking about upcoming events, let me just quickly plug our next event is Exporting to Japan for Hawaii companies. That's on June 9th. That one's in the afternoon. Normally our events start at 9 a.m., but that one starts at 3 p.m. because we have people joining us from Japan, speakers for that event. And then July 7th, we have Exporting from Hawaii Island. So this one is a bit specific to the Big Island. Okay, with that, let's open it up to questions for Jamie, Greg, or Jim. And let me reiterate that I will be sending out these presentations in PDF form soon, as well as editing this video and putting it on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, my name is Greg, and aloha, and thank you very much, Rob and Jamie, for having me, and for having Jim as well on this call. I'm with the Export-Import Bank of the U.S. For those of you who have not heard of us, we're a federal government agency. We're based in D.C. I'm located in Southern California, but Hawaii is part of my territory, so to speak, for the EXIM Bank. And I've been out there once on EXIM business. I had 14 appointments in a 3-day time span, but looking for another reason to come out to your beautiful state. So what we do is that we support, or our mission is to support U.S. jobs by helping companies promote or achieve greater export sales. And we do that by leveling the playing field, so to speak, and offering or facilitating financing for U.S. companies as well, and protecting their payments on open account sales to foreign buyers. So I think for small businesses, our 2 primary programs are the export credit insurance and our working capital guarantee program. Despite our reputation as being a bank for, or an entity, I should say, for very large companies, and sometimes our customers are very large, over 90% of our authorizations are on behalf of very small to very small companies, and no transaction or dollar amount is too small for us to consider insuring. Favorite example of a customer that is a small business of mine personally is a company in the Central Valley of California, which is farmland, of course, if you're familiar with California. It's very agriculture focused. And this fellow has a desk, a laptop, a phone, and himself, and that's it. And he buys and sells produce, and he exports almost $5 million in produce every year. And he's been a long-standing EXIM Bank customer, both through our working capital guarantee program and with our export credit insurance. So again, we level the playing field in terms of making you competitive with your foreign competition by supplementing commercial financing and minimizing your payment risk, because at the end of the day, when you export, your key objective is getting paid, right? So with respect to the export credit insurance, the way it works is that you, the exporter, and it does it, you can be a wholesaler or you can be a manufacturing company, And I realize in Hawaii, it would probably be more of a wholesale focus than, you don't have many manufacturers there, but anybody correct me if I'm wrong. We protect and insure foreign accounts receivable. So let's say you found a new distributor in Taiwan, and you rightly ask them for cash in advance for the first couple, say, sales you make to them. Let's say they are a recurring buyer, like a distributor or a retailer for your product. So they're going to be coming back to you from time to time. So every time they come back to you, you don't necessarily, well, if you can get away with it, that's great. But asking your buyer for every recurring sale to pay cash up front or to open a letter of credit can be cumbersome for them. It's the way to go for the first few transactions, because you want to get to know your buyer with or without our insurance, doesn't matter. But once you get to know them, eventually they're going to come to you and they're going to say, hey, your competitor in Japan is offering us 60-day terms. Can you offer us terms as well? And so you might be inclined to walk away from the business because you're thinking, no, that's too risky. With open account, of course, you're delivering your product or service in anticipation of subsequently getting paid, which puts you at the high, you, the seller or the exporter, at the high risk end of the spectrum of risk, right? Payment risk. But if you insure those open account sales with us, we protect with a multi-buyer policy 95% of the value of your payment exposure. So let's say it's a $10,000 invoice and there's no down payment. We'll protect $9,500 of that invoice against payment default, which is to say, if your buyer defaults on payment, you can file a claim with us for 95% of what they owe you, okay? And we have policies that are designed to ensure just one individual buyer at a time, but we also have multi-buyer policies where you can insure multiple foreign buyers under the same policy. And what that allows you to do is, because it's government insured receivables, they're typically regarded as high value collateral in the eyes of lenders, and from whom you're getting advances to help you bridge cash flow gaps while you're exporting with open account terms, right? Helps you expand into new markets or increase your sales in existing markets because you're offering payment flexibility to your recurring buyer. If that buyer is a distributor, what you're trying to do unilaterally is help them align the point at which they receive payments from their customers to the point at which they need to pay you, their supplier. And by helping them align those payments, you're enabling them to stock more of your goods, and you can shift your inventory costs increasingly from yourself over to your buyers, and that's very beneficial for your profitability. You'll see on the right hand of the screen, we have a working capital guarantee program. However, my friend and associate, Jim Newsom, is going to start hollering that that's what he's here to talk about with the SBA. And in fact, you should focus on Jim and the SBA program when it comes to working capital, in my opinion, if you are a small business. And that's because under our working capital guarantee at the Exit Bank, well, quick differential, there's no cap on what size working capital line of credit we can provide. So if you're a big company with big borrowing needs, that's important. But if you're seeking a line of credit for, say, less than $500,000, I would say go with Jim and the SBA, Office of International Trade, because most lenders prefer them. They are less costly to the lender than we are, and therefore they can help you organize lines of credit well within that $5 million cap that they have, but lines of credit for $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, and I'll let Jim talk about that. Okay, so with getting back to the export credit insurance, then with a multi-buyer policy, you can get a so-called whole turnover policy where you automatically insure all of your foreign receivables under the EXIM Bank policy. Or you can get a standard policy, which I refer to as a select risk policy, where you can drop as much as 50% of your foreign receivables portfolio from the insurance, leaving you with 50% of your portfolio to insure, okay? And that gives you some ability to cherry pick if you're extremely comfortable, for example, with some of your buyers in Japan, for example. With the select risk policy, you don't have to insure those buyers. You can drop them from the insurance and insure other accounts. We price that policy based on your export credit experience, the number of write-offs you've had over the past 3 years, the number of years you've been managing international credit, the number of years you've been extending open account terms to foreign buyers, et cetera. We will price the premium rate based on that. For the whole turnover policy, I can tell you the premium rate is set from 1 to 60 days. The premium rate is 55 basis points, or approximately 0.5% of your payment exposure. So on a $10,000 invoice with no down payment, it would cost you 10,000 times 0.0055 equals $55. It would cost you $55 to transfer $9,500 of your payment risk over to the EXIM Bank on that $10,000 invoice. Something to note here is our express insurance policy is specifically designed for those of you who are relatively new to exporting, and in particular, new to exporting with payment terms or on credit terms. What the policy allows you to do is name your buyers to the policy at your pace. So for example, with an express insurance application, for which incidentally there's no application fee, let's say you name one buyer to the policy application, and then 3 months later you have another buyer that comes along that you also want to insure, and a buyer after that, 2 months after that, so on and so forth. You can name your buyers to the policy at your own pace, and the express policy allows you to name up to 10 foreign buyers before you have to graduate to a different type of policy. The cost for that, again, just for 1 to 60-day payment terms, and of course we can go well beyond 60 days, but just to give you a sense of the cost, for the whole turnover policy, recall it was 55 basis points. For the express policy, it's 65 basis points. So your multiplier to calculate your insurance cost is 0.0065 multiplied by whatever the dollar amount of your payment exposure is. And then for complete flexibility in terms of who you're insuring or not insuring, we have a single buyer. And incidentally, all of our policies come with our 12-month policy periods. So the policies expire after 12 months, but will, in most situations, fairly automatically renew unless you tell us not to renew it, okay? With a single buyer policy, you're insuring one individual buyer. It only protects 90% of your payment exposure as opposed to the 95% protection you get with the multi-buyer policies. Again, there's no deductible or first loss deductible with a single buyer policy. It is the most expensive of our policies, and it's based on the country that your buyer resides in and the payment terms that you are extending to them. And something to note here is if you take out, say, an SBA guarantee on a working capital line of credit, and you have our export credit insurance at the same time, you get a 25% discount on the insurance premiums on that, say, for example, 65 basis points with the express policy, okay? We support just about any industry sector you can think of. Here are some of the industry sectors where most of our support has been going to. On our website, and with my help, you can find something called a country limitation schedule. So if you're interested in EXIM Bank support for your export sales, I'd suggest you consult our country limitation schedule first. It'll tell you where we, the EXIM Bank, are open for business and where we're not. I can tell you we are supportive of business with most countries on every continent on the planet, but there are exceptions. We're closed right now in Argentina. We're closed in Russia and Ukraine. We're closed in Afghanistan. But so in other words, consult that country limitation schedule. Frequently, when you bring up a country, it'll show footnotes in addition to whether we're open or closed for business there. And if you're having difficulty interpreting those footnotes, again, contact me and I'll help you with that, okay? What did it say back here? Okay, I should mention the export credit insurance is comprehensive in the sense that it protects you against any political, financial, commercial, regulatory reason that the buyer might not be able to pay you. So it's comprehensive trade risk insurance. If you're interested in obtaining export credit insurance, I'd suggest you contact me first. If you get to the point that you say, Greg, I'm ready to apply for this, I would have one of our brokers contact you to help you with the application and to take your application for processing. They will convert a hard copy of your application into our electronic system and submit that or transmit that information electronically to our underwriters in Washington, D.C. If you're looking for a working capital line of credit with the EXIM Bank, similarly, we'll have a lender account manager contact you and get your credit profile or develop that for us so they can refer that to so-called delegated authority lenders of the EXIM Bank. Our regional export promotion program partner in Hawaii, not that Rob and Jamie are not our partners, but we have an official partner there. They are the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone number 9 and Luis Salaveria. They are our official rep for the state of Hawaii, okay? And with that, there is my contact information. And thank you very much, mahalo. And Rob, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Greg. That was a fantastic presentation. I'm going to just very briefly bring up the EXIM website just so people can get further information if they need to. Very simple address, exim.gov. Greg had his contact information on his final slide, and excuse me, I will be sending out these presentations in PDF form to all registered attendees after the event. So you don't have to worry about writing down all that information quickly. You'll be getting it from me shortly. So I would like to make a couple quick comments, just that in my day job, I sell products, US products into Asia, all over Asia. And I use EXIM credit insurance constantly. I spend a lot of time working with our foreign customers, getting their credit information on sales and business history and what have you. And there's a standard form that we submit to the EXIM brokers, and we're able to get that insurance. And I can say that in the past several months, we've actually had to call on that insurance frequently, particularly with sales to China, and even more particularly in sales to the Shanghai area, which has been shut down a lot, and customers have not been able to pay. Many of the customers have simply gone out of business in the past several weeks because of the shutdowns there. So the EXIM credit insurance is a fantastic capability and asset for our companies to utilize, and I strongly recommend it. It's a very inexpensive policy, as Greg highlighted, and can be worth it when you really need it. And I think that also from a business decision, it helps you do business with foreign companies that don't know you very well, and you don't know them at all. And it allows you just the feeling of peace that you're able to send your products internationally and not have to worry about getting paid at some point, which I think alleviating that stress is a great asset for our companies to have. Okay, any quick comments? Somebody did text me a comment here, and we will cover this in our export plan writing workshop, but they asked how complicated or how much time should a company invest in writing their export plan for an SBA loan like that?
Well, first I would say you should seriously consider putting together an export plan, even if you're not seeking financing. If you're headed into foreign markets, you really want to think it through. And there's lots of resources available to you. And the Hawaii Export Council clearly is going to be one of those you want to turn to be able to get some guidance on putting together an export plan. And that international checklist should cover most of the bases, but being able to walk it through with Rob and his group certainly could be of help. But it doesn't need to be all that involved. It can be a subset of your business plan, or it can be a standalone export plan. But we do want you to think it through.
Can you remind us, how does a small company get that checklist?
If you're distributing the materials from this webinar, obviously it'll be included there. But it's available online through sba.gov/international, and I'll be glad to provide it to you personally.
Oh, okay, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you for that. I'll just make sure I send it out to everybody here.
Okay.
Let's see.
Rob, can I also make a comment about that? Thank you, Jim, for emphasizing that, because that is one of the questions that we ask when a company registers for HiSTEP, is whether or not do they have a business plan and do they have an export plan? And as you said, whether it's a standalone or part of their business plan, that is important, because we too, in our application for company assistance, that's actually the primary piece of what the whole application is evaluated on, is their export plan. And we emphasize it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but we want to know that they have thought it through, that they've done some of their homework, that they see, the market that they're going into, they've thought it out, they've looked at the competition, that how are they going to go about getting into that market, et cetera. So you're right, it's important whether or not they're going to apply for a loan or company assistance. I think companies do need to think through what they're going to do and how they're going to go about it.
There's another question that came in for Jim about the SBA loans. Would a company just go to their standard bank, whether that's Bank of Hawaii or First Hawaiian Bank or the Hawaii National Bank, and talk to somebody there, or do they contact you first? And then part two is, are these loans available through credit unions?
They are. They actually are available through credit unions, not that many credit unions are currently active in our programs, but more and more are joining. So it is an alternative, and I am glad to assist in getting them qualified or essentially submitting the necessary paperwork if they choose to be an SBA lender, specifically for export purposes. On the first part of the question, absolutely. Yeah, you want to talk to the bank that you are currently working with to see if they are familiar with our export programs. Same would be true with EXIM. In either case, we act as guarantors, so you do need to go through a lender to apply to secure our export guarantee support. And it's actually the bank that turns around and makes an application to us to receive the guarantee. But you want to work with a lender that's familiar with our programs, hopefully already participating in our programs. You do have the banks, the lenders, because we do have both bank and non-bank lenders. They do have to qualify to utilize the Export Express program because it is full delegated authority. And they do have to establish an agreement with SBA for the 7A programs, which the export programs are part of. And that would apply to the international trade loan.
Okay, great, thank you. And then this leads into a question for Greg. EXIM would not use local banks per se for getting credit insurance or what have you. You would use a local broker. Is that how that system would work? Are there brokers in Hawaii that can handle that?
Well, actually, it's not very complicated. No, you don't go through a bank to apply for export credit insurance. And you don't have to go through a broker to apply. You can start with me, actually. And what I'm saying is that once I help you determine which policy is best for you, and we can go through the application form together so you understand how it needs to be filled out. And once you've reached that point, you're comfortable with the parameters of the policy and what it's going to cost. Then you would say, hey, Greg, I'm ready to apply. And when and only if you say, Greg, I'm ready to apply, on a rotating basis, we would select one of our most experienced brokers to contact you to then actually take your application and submit that to our underwriters. They would help you set up an electronic account with us on EXIM Online. And through that electronic account, you would receive your written quotation from us, basically stipulating in writing what the premium rate is going to be, what, if any, deductible is going to apply, and other parameters of the policy, like is it going to cover 95% or 90% of your payment exposure? And then once you approve your written quotation, and before the insurance can become effective, you have to place with us a fully refundable $500 deposit. Again, I want to, and you get that money back any number of ways, but it's fully refundable. And so I want to emphasize there's no application fee, so don't confuse that with an application fee. Again, you would only pay the deposit once you're approved and once you accept our written quotation, if that makes sense. And the reason we recommend you work with a broker is in a claim situation. I work for the insurance carrier, the EXIM Bank. So in a claim situation, it would be difficult for me to represent you to our claims adjusters. It's best you do that through a third party, independent third party that is licensed to do business with us, because that's what they do. The brokers really have the experience in representing exporters in a claim.
Okay, great, thank you. There's a very specific question that's come in on the Q&A. Because I am a global health and IT service disabled veteran-owned business delivering support to underserved island nations in the Asia Pacific region, and I'm setting up an office in Samoa. Can the export loan program support my service industry and new office expansion in Samoa?
That sounds like a Jim question, I believe.
I'll field it. It's tough to, for us to be able to support that because American Samoa would not be considered as an export market. So the cost of establishing your business there would not be eligible if or once you have established your operations and you are exporting services to other countries, to foreign countries, we certainly could help you at that point. But not, unfortunately, in terms of getting set up at American Samoa.
Okay, great. There's no more questions coming in right now, so I'd like to close. We're just a little over time, but it's been a fantastic webinar. We greatly appreciate it. I think that our local companies here in Hawaii need to use your services much more often, and I'm very happy to be able to introduce both of you to our local companies here. And again, I will make sure that everybody as an attendee here gets your contact information, and we'll reach out to you with any questions, and we can pursue that. Hopefully we can make this an annual event because I think that it's extremely helpful for our companies here. So we'd like to thank you very much for your time. I know it's just after lunchtime, so I'm sure you guys are ready to run out and grab lunch, but for us, we're wrapping up here at 10 a.m. So thank you again. Thanks again to Jamie Lum from DBET. This is Rob Hack with the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, and we will see you soon. Aloha.
Hello, everyone.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.